You are born into altitude, not in the way birds are born, flung screaming into air, nor as storms are born, coiled in heat and pressure. You are born into altitude the way a thought is born, slowly, reluctantly, already aware of how far it might fall. Below you, there is no ground that can be trusted. Below you, the world has learned to loosen its grip on solidity. Oceans breathe upward in mist. Mountains exhale their memories into the sky. Cities are rumors, flattened by distance, reduced to geometry and glimmer. And above you there are clouds that do not move. They are old clouds, anchored clouds, permanent in the way nothing else is. They do not drift with the casualness of weather. They do not unravel when touched by sun. They remain dense and layered, bound by forces that no longer exist anywhere else in the world. Their bellies are heavy with vapor and mineral dust, with histories of pressure and cold. They are as thick as continents, as patient as stone. Between these clouds, silk has been stretched. Not silk as the world below understands it, spun for ornament or luxury, but heavy silk, cloud silk, woven from fibers cultivated at altitude, nourished by frost and lightning. It holds weight without resisting it. It bends without tearing. It hums faintly when tension changes, like a breath caught in fabric. These silks form pavilions. Not buildings, not rooms, not shelters in the ordinary sense. They are gestures, arcs and folds suspended between clouds, stitched at their edges, anchored by nothing visible, responding constantly to the sky's slow moods. They swell when the air warms. They tighten when cold passes through. They shimmer when dawn arrives sideways, reflected through layers of vapor. This is the retreat, not a place people arrive at accidentally, not a place people stay in forever. It exists for those who must come apart gently, those who must be unstitched from their lives without being dropped. You are not here to rest. You are not here to ascend. You are here to maintain the edges. You are a cloud weaver. Your work is not creation, it is continuation. Every pavilion is bordered by seams, long, patient stitches that bind silk to cloud, tension to buoyancy, intention to atmosphere. These seams do not remain stable on their own. Clouds breathe. Silk remembers stress. The sky is never still, even when it pretends to be. Without constant tending, the retreat would loosen. Not dramatically, not all at once. It would drift a fraction of a degree each day. A pavilion would sag, imperceptibly. A seam would thin, a fold would misalign. Over weeks, the geometry would soften. Over months, the clouds would begin to disagree with one another about where they are supposed to be. Eventually, the retreat would become weather. You prevent that. You move along the edges. You carry your tools in a harness that floats slightly behind you, as if reluctant to be carried at all. Needles long as forearms, curved to follow the mathematics of cloud surfaces. Spools of silk thread that glows faintly, not with light, but with readiness. Weights that fall upward when released, testing tension by refusing to obey gravity. Your hands are accustomed to cold that does not burn and heat that does not scorch. Your fingers know the difference between vapor density and memory density, between a cloud that is tired and one that is merely distracted. You stitch. Each stitch is a decision. Too tight, and the cloud resists, shedding vapor in protest, destabilizing the pavilion's balance. Too loose, and the silk will wander, slowly forgetting what it was meant to hold. So you listen. You press your palm to the cloud's surface and feel the vibration of its internal currents. You rest your ear against silk and hear how the wind translates itself into tension. You breathe slowly, because hurried breath creates turbulence, and turbulence creates work. Time behaves differently here. Not faster, not slower, softer. Days do not end, they dissolve. Nights arrive like a thought you were already having. The sun does not rise or set so much as tilt its attention. Shadows are rare and precious, pooling briefly in folds of silk before being erased. Sometimes you see the retreat's inhabitants drifting through the pavilions. They move carefully, as if aware that every step is a negotiation. They speak little. When they do, their voices are absorbed by silk and cloud, softened until words become intention rather than sound. They are not your responsibility. You do not ask why they came. The retreat is not concerned with reasons. It is concerned with holding. Your responsibility is the boundary between staying and leaving. You work the perimeter, moving from pavilion to pavilion, cloud to cloud. Some clouds are generous, offering stable surfaces and predictable currents. Others are ancient and stubborn, holding on to patterns from climates that no longer exist. There is one cloud you avoid when you can. It sits slightly apart from the others, darker at its core, threaded with slow, rotational movement. The silk attached to it always feels heavier than it should, as if burdened by remembered storms. When you must stitch there, your hands ache afterward. Not from effort, from recognition. You learned this work from those who came before you. Not through instruction, but through observation, through long hours watching hands move, watching mistakes corrected, not by undoing, but by compensating. You learn that the goal is not perfection, it is survivability. The retreat does not need to be flawless. It needs to remain. There was a time, you are told, when the clouds were not stationary, when the retreat was anchored to something solid, an island, a mountain, a structure rooted in the world below. But solidity proved to be an illusion. The ground shifted, the anchors failed. The retreat learned that staying aloft required less certainty than staying grounded. So the clouds were chosen, not captured, not commanded, invited. Some clouds accepted, others passed by, uninterested in permanence. The ones that stayed did so because they understood weight differently. They understood that holding does not require immobility. You understand this now. You feel it every time you lean back into your harness, trusting silk and vapor to keep you suspended over nothing. There are moments, rare and quiet, when you stop stitching and simply float. You let the tools drift. You let your body align with the sky's slow pulse. In these moments, you are not a weaver. You are a seam yourself, held between effort and release. But you never linger long, because the edges are always changing. Because drift is patient, because somewhere along the perimeter a stitch is loosening, and if you do not tend it, the retreat will not fail spectacularly. It will simply begin to forget what it was. And forgetting, here, is the most dangerous form of falling. You begin each cycle the same way. Not with movement, but with listening. Before your hands touch silk or cloud, before your harness settles its familiar tension across your shoulders, you pause at the threshold of the retreat's perimeter. You close your eyes, not to block out the sky, but to feel it more clearly. Vision is greedy. It insists on edges. The work you do requires awareness without insistence. The clouds speak first, not in language, but in pressure. In subtle shifts of buoyancy that register in your inner ear, in the way your balance adjusts before you are conscious of it. A cloud that has slept well feels level. A cloud troubled by passing winds carries asymmetry, a slight insistence in one direction or another. You mark these things without judgment. Then the silk responds. Silk remembers. Every stitch you have ever placed is still present, encoded in tension and alignment. When the air warms, the silk expands, revisiting decisions made seasons ago. When cold creeps through the layers of the sky, the fibers tighten, recalling moments when you chose restraint over reinforcement. You do not undo old work. You work around it. Your tools awaken as you move. The needles hum softly, not from vibration, but from anticipation. The thread unwinds itself from the spool in slow, deliberate arcs, floating until you guide it. Even the weights seem attentive, hovering in your periphery like thoughts waiting to be tested. You move along the edge of a pavilion that spans two clouds of unequal density. This pavilion is known for its restlessness, not because it is unstable, but because it is sensitive. Small changes in air pressure ripple across its surface like emotion across skin. The inhabitants favor this pavilion, though they never say why. Perhaps they feel the responsiveness. Perhaps they are comforted by a place that admits to movement rather than pretending stillness. You begin stitching at a seam where silk meets cloud. The needle passes through fabric, then into vapor that briefly behaves like matter. The cloud yields, then closes behind the thread, sealing the stitch without resistance. This is not penetration. It is agreement. Each stitch takes time, not because the motion is slow, but because the sky must be allowed to respond. You place the needle, draw the thread through, then wait. You feel how the cloud adjusts around the intrusion. You sense whether the silk accepts the new tension or protests with micro vibrations. You adjust accordingly. There are patterns to your stitching, not decorative ones, but functional rhythms. 3 close stitches followed by a longer span, a pause after every 7th insertion. These patterns are not written down. They emerge from practice, from the accumulated understanding that the sky prefers certain cadences. You are halfway along the seam when you feel it. A discrepancy. At first, it is so subtle you almost dismiss it as fatigue. A faint pull, not toward or away from the cloud, but sideways, a suggestion of lateral drift that does not align with prevailing currents. You stop. You release the thread, letting it float, and place both palms against the silk. You steady your breath. You listen again. The pull persists, not strong, consistent. You test the tension with a weight, releasing it gently and watching how it rises. The weight ascends as expected, but it tilts, angling slightly toward a direction that should be neutral. This is new. You consult no instruments. There are none that would help. Instead, you widen your awareness, extending it beyond the immediate seam. You trace the tension through adjacent pavilions, through the cloud anchors, through the invisible geometry that holds the retreat in its particular arrangement. The geometry answers with hesitation. It is not broken. It is reconsidering. You have felt this before, though rarely. Moments when the retreat seems to question itself, as if weighing the effort of remaining cohesive against the ease of dispersal. These moments usually pass. A few well-placed stitches, a redistribution of tension, and the structure settles back into agreement. Still, you note the location. You continue working, but with increased attention. You reinforce not by tightening, but by redirecting, adding stitches that encourage the silk to share its load with neighboring seams. You whisper no words. The work does not respond to sound. It responds to intention carried through motion. As you move, you become aware of the retreat's inhabitants again. They are gathered in a pavilion not far from where you work, seated or reclining on layered silk that cups their bodies. From a distance, they appear weightless, their outlines softened by cloud-filtered light. You do not look directly at them, not out of prohibition, but out of courtesy. They are here to be held, not observed. Your presence at the edges is a reminder of structure, and structure can be intrusive when one is trying to dissolve. Still, you sense their awareness of you, not individually, but collectively. A subtle orientation toward the perimeter, toward the knowledge that someone is ensuring the world does not slide away beneath them. You have always known that your work is necessary. Lately, you have begun to suspect it is also noticed. You finish the seam and move on, crossing open sky between clouds. There is no fear in this crossing. The harness holds you in a stable relationship with gravity's absence. The silk lines you clip into are old companions, each with its own history of strain and relief. As you drift, you think about the stories told among cloud weavers. Not myths, exactly, observations passed along without emphasis. Stories of retreats that chose to untether, not catastrophically, gracefully. In those stories, the clouds slowly released their agreements. The silk loosened its memory of tension. The pavilions thinned, becoming veils, then mist. The inhabitants felt no sudden drop, no panic. They simply found themselves standing in weather, and then in air, and then back in the world below, changed but intact. The cloud weavers in those stories did not stop the process. They recognized it. They stitched differently, easing rather than resisting, guiding the retreat's dispersal so that nothing tore, nothing fell too fast. You were told these stories as reassurance, as proof that failure is not always collapse. But now, feeling the geometry hesitate, you wonder if reassurance was the point, or preparation. You reach the darker cloud, the one you avoid. It looms larger today, its internal rotation more pronounced. The silk attached to it is taut, not from stress, but from expectation, as if it anticipates your touch. You brace yourself and begin. The cloud resists more than others, not by hardening but by remembering. Storm patterns echo through its structure, ghost pressures that push back against your stitches. Each insertion sends a tremor through your arms, not painful, but heavy with implication. As you work, the sideways pull strengthens. You stop again, suspended between cloud and sky, and allow yourself to fully acknowledge it. The retreat is not merely drifting. It is aligning with something else. Not a place, a state. You do not know what that state is yet, only that it is consistent, pervasive, and patient. It does not feel hostile. It feels resolved. You finish the seam slower than usual, placing stitches that can be undone by weather rather than by hands. You leave intentional gaps, spaces where tension can redistribute without tearing. This is not standard practice, but neither is ignoring what you feel. When you are done, you do not move on immediately. You rest your forehead against the silk, close your eyes, and let the retreat's weightless mass surround your awareness. You feel the pull again, gentler now, diffused by your adjustments. The retreat exhales, not in relief, in acknowledgement. You do not know yet what this means for your role, only that the edges you tend are no longer just holding something in place. They are shaping how it will leave. And for the first time since you became a cloud weaver, you understand that your work may not be to prevent drift, but to teach it how to happen without harm. There is a ritual you were never formally taught, not because it was secret, but because it could not be practiced until it was needed. It exists in the negative space of instruction, in the things left unsaid when older cloud weavers spoke about drift and release. You have carried it with you without knowing its shape, like a tool wrapped in silk at the bottom of your harness. Now, the shape begins to emerge. You feel it the next time you approach the perimeter, not as urgency, but as invitation. The retreat does not pull at you. It does not demand. Instead, it offers a subtle recalibration, a chance to work with its movement rather than against it. You adjust your routine. You still listen first, but now, when you listen, you widen the question. You are no longer asking only, where is the tension? You are asking, where does the tension want to go? The difference is profound. Clouds that once felt restless now feel directional. Silk that once hummed with tightness now carries long, resonant tones like strings tuned for a slower song. Even your own body responds differently. Your balance shifting not to maintain stillness, but to trace gentle arcs in the air. You begin the ritual without marking it as such. It starts with thread selection. You choose a spool that has been in your harness longer than most. Its thread is slightly uneven, not from flaw, but from history. It has been used in repairs that required patience rather than strength. It carries the memory of yielding. You anchor yourself between two clouds and let the thread unwind freely, measuring not by length but by feel. When it feels like enough, you cut it, not cleanly, but with a slight fray at the end. This will matter later. Your stitching changes. You no longer place stitches perpendicular to the seam. Instead, you angle them, following the retreat's emerging alignment. Each stitch becomes a vector, a suggestion, rather than a command. You leave more space between insertions, trusting the silk to negotiate its own equilibrium. This kind of stitching requires restraint. Every instinct trained into you urges reinforcement, symmetry, clarity. You resist those instincts gently, the way one resists the urge to correct a dream while still inside it. As you work, you become aware of the inhabitants again, but this time more distinctly. They are not simply resting. They are listening to. You feel it in the way the pavilions respond to their presence. Weight shifts subtly as bodies adjust. Breath patterns synchronize with the silk's slow expansion and contraction. The retreat is not holding them passively. It is engaging them in a shared rhythm. Some inhabitants have begun to move closer to the edges, not out of curiosity, but out of instinct. They gravitate toward places where the silk thins, where the sky feels closer. They sit with their backs against the seams, feeling the minute vibrations of your work through layers of fabric. You wonder what they feel. Perhaps they sense the same thing you do, that the retreat is changing its relationship with gravity, with permanence, with purpose. Perhaps they do not think in those terms at all. Perhaps they simply feel safe enough to notice movement again. You continue the ritual at the darker cloud. It receives your angled stitches without resistance this time. Its internal rotation slows, not stopping, but smoothing into a more coherent pattern. The cloud's weight seems to redistribute itself, no longer pressing inward, but spreading outward along the silk. You realize something then. The clouds are not anchors. They are participants. They have always been. You finish the seam and do not move on. Instead, you unclip one line of your harness and let yourself pivot, hanging sideways relative to the retreat. From this orientation, the geometry looks different. Lines you thought were straight reveal gentle curves. Pavilions once aligned now form a subtle spiral. The retreat is not drifting randomly. It is coiling, not tightly. Patiently, you let yourself hang there, absorbing the pattern. The ritual requires this pause, not as observation, but as integration. You allow your internal sense of balance to recalibrate to the new geometry, so your future stitches will emerge from alignment rather than correction. Memory surfaces. You recall the first time you ever stepped onto cloud silk, how your body panicked at the lack of reference points. You remember how an older weaver, faceless now but steady, had placed a hand between your shoulders and said nothing, allowing your breath to slow until the sky made sense again. You understand now why no explanation was given. Understanding arrives when the body is ready. As you resume work, you begin to notice changes in yourself. Your hands move with less deliberation, not because you are careless, but because you trust the negotiation between silk and cloud. Your breathing deepens. Your sense of time stretches further, accommodating longer arcs of change. You also notice fatigue differently. It is no longer localized in your muscles or joints. Instead, it appears as a gentle thinning of attention, a sign that you must rest before your awareness frays. You honor this sign, anchoring yourself in a quiet place between pavilions and letting the retreat hold you for a while. In this suspended rest, you feel something unexpected. Gratitude. not from the retreat exactly, but from the process itself, from the knowledge that holding and letting go are not opposites, but phases of the same movement. When you return to work, you make one final adjustment. You begin to mirror the retreat spiral in your stitching, reinforcing not the edges themselves, but the path along which the edges will one day dissolve. You create seams that can unravel in sequence, guided by wind and warmth rather than by force. This is the heart of the ritual. You are not securing the retreat against loss. You are teaching it how to become something else. As you place the last stitch of the cycle, the sky shifts. Not dramatically, a slight change in light, as if the sun has found a new angle of interest. Shadows appear briefly in places they have never existed before, tracing curves along the pavilions that hint at future motion. The inhabitants feel it too. You sense a collective easing, a subtle release of held breath. Some of them stand, others lie back more fully, trusting the silk beneath them. The retreat is still here, but it is no longer pretending it will be forever. And neither, you realize, are you. For the first time, you allow yourself to ask a question you have avoided since becoming a cloud weaver. What happens to the one who stitches the edge when the edge is no longer meant to remain? The sky does not answer in words. It answers by holding you, exactly as you have taught it to, without insisting that the hold last. There are days when the weight of the sky grows heavy, not because the clouds thicken, but because your awareness of them shifts. The edge between holding and releasing becomes harder to define, not because it is unstable, but because it is no longer clear which side you are on. You begin each morning the same way. You walk the perimeter of the retreat, not with the same urgency as before, not with the same acute attention to the possibility of failure, but with a quieter sort of purpose. You allow your senses to absorb what is happening, not just to the silk, not just to the clouds, but to the inhabitants who now move with a different awareness. They are changing, too. When you pass them now, their gaze holds something more than tranquility. It holds the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the edges of their lives are not as rigid as they once thought. They are no longer simply held, waiting. They are becoming something in this space, something that is drawn not from the earth, but from the air, from the transition between permanence and drift. You stop near a pavilion where a single inhabitant has been lying, still as a shadow, for some time. You don't ask how long. They don't need to answer. The air around them hums softly, the silk beneath them shifting as if it recognizes the quiet work being done. You do not disturb them. Instead, you notice the seams. They are different here, not frayed, but slackened in a way that you had not anticipated. This pavilion is not unraveling. It is expanding. You rest your hand against the silk. The retreat feels the shift too. It moves gently, without jerks, without panic, but it moves. The whole structure, a vast network of tension and release, shifts ever so slightly to accommodate something that is no longer about holding, but about yielding. The pavilion seems to breathe with the inhabitant, responding to their stillness, to their steady presence in this space of transition. You step away. You do not repair. You do not reinforce. Instead, you listen. The retreat is no longer resisting the sky. It is becoming a part of it. Each pavilion, each cloud, no longer feels like an isolated structure held together by force. It feels like a woven whole, where every thread, every stitch is in conversation with the currents of the air. You feel the slow turn of the seasons. Though there is no earthly calendar here, you feel the subtle change in the atmosphere, the soft shift of the clouds towards something else, something new. The way the silk, once taut and structured, now holds itself with less insistence, its edges beginning to unravel at their own pace. You cross the threshold of the darker cloud again, the one you once feared for its weight. Today it seems lighter, as if it is beginning to relax its grip on itself. The stitches you placed before are still there, but now they hum in harmony with the retreat's gentle undulation. They are no longer forces of correction. They are part of the natural flow. You pause, allowing the weight of the air to catch you. There is no longer any distance between the work you do and the space you hold. No longer a boundary between what is you and what is the retreat. You are both becoming something lighter, something more fluid. The feeling of transition is palpable here, in this space where even the clouds no longer feel anchored to the earth. They float between states neither fully solid nor completely vapor, neither here nor there. The inhabitants move more freely now. They come and go between pavilions without hesitation, as if they understand that the structure is no longer an obstacle to their movement, but a partner in it. They sit near the edges and look out into the open air, no longer seeking the safety of boundary, but embracing the openness it offers. You pass them with less focus now, no longer feeling the same responsibility to maintain the structure they occupy. You do not look for loose threads. You do not search for misalignments. There is no longer a sense of failure when things loosen. You realize that the retreat, in some quiet, ineffable way, has taught you the same lesson it has taught them. The edges are not something to hold, but something to release. The ritual has reached its conclusion, not because the work is done, but because it has become something more. The edges you have stitched and tended no longer require your intervention. They are part of a larger, more expansive process now, a process of unfolding, not of stasis. The inhabitants no longer seem like visitors to this place. They are becoming part of it, part of the movement, part of the slow, inevitable turn of everything that is tethered to the sky. They are not merely held here, they are being woven into the fabric of the clouds themselves. And you are becoming one with that same fabric. You do not resist it, you do not pull back from the drift, you surrender to it. In a way, you have always been part of this process, but now you see it clearly. You have been stitching, not to hold things in place, but to teach them how to move. And now the lesson is complete. You stand at the edge of one pavilion, looking out toward the open sky. You could step off, but there is no need. You could let go, but you already have. There is no boundary now between you and the retreat, no line to cross. The clouds are already embracing you. The air is already holding you. And the silk has become a current that moves with you, not against you. You take a step, and there is nothing but the movement. nothing but the becoming. It is said that to release something is not to abandon it, but to allow it to change beyond recognition. And in that transformation, the one who releases is never truly left behind. It is in this act of letting go, this act of becoming, that all things, clouds, silk, even the hand that weaves them, are brought into a new understanding of what it means to remain. And so you stand there at the threshold of everything you have made and realize that the act of stitching was never about preservation. It was about participation. You were never meant to hold the retreat in place. You were meant to guide it through the spaces between here and there. You were meant to teach it how to breathe when the wind grew restless, how to stretch and yield when the sky itself changed shape. It is not a failure to let go. It is an invitation to become something larger, something that is no longer defined by its boundaries, but by its movement through the air, by its ability to shift and flow as the world changes around it. And now you are no longer the weaver, carefully tending each edge, each stitch, each cloud. Now you are a part of the retreat, floating between sky and earth, held by nothing but your own quiet agreement with the world. There are no edges left to protect. There is no boundary to maintain. The retreat is still there, of course. The pavilions remain, their silk edges still visible against the backdrop of sky. But they are no longer static. They no longer exist as isolated structures, each held apart from the world by a weaver's careful hand. Instead, they exist as a whole, each pavilion a node in the retreat's expansive, breathing pattern. The sky no longer merely holds them. The sky becomes them. And so do you. The inhabitants of the retreat, who once walked along the edges of their own lives, now seem to walk freely in the currents of air, as though they, too, have understood the truth of the retreat's purpose. They no longer hide within the safe confines of its walls. They move between pavilions, between clouds, as if the sky itself is a space of possibility, a space not to be preserved, but to be grown into. You have taught them how to step into that space. You have shown them how to let go of the idea that they must be held. And in doing so, you have taught yourself. Now, the retreat is not simply a place, nor even a state of being. It is a process, a becoming, an unfolding, a shared pulse in which all things are caught and released in turn. There is no permanence here, no finality. There is only the ever-present movement between states, between worlds, between the edges of things and the spaces in between. It is an endless act of becoming. Perhaps in time others will come. They will pass through, they will rest, they will be held by the retreat, as you once were. But they, too, will find their way into the sky, and when they do, they will see that the edges are no longer there to hold them. They are there to show them how to move, how to drift, how to become. The clouds themselves will drift too. The silk will wear thin, and the retreat will fade in ways that are beyond your control. But it will not be lost. It will not be forgotten. It will simply change, as all things do. And when the time comes, when the final edge of the retreat is no longer held together by thread, but by the air itself, you will not grieve. You will not resist. You will understand that the act of letting go is the act of becoming something else, something new. And in that space, there is no finality. There is only the soft hum of the silk, the gentle pull of the sky, and the quiet pulse of the retreat as it continues to unfold, as it continues to become. You have tended the edges. You have measured the tension, aligned the silk, felt the delicate pulse of the clouds beneath your hands, and guided them into harmony with the air. You have kept the retreat whole, tethered, steady, while it drifted towards something new, something you could not name, but always felt. And now, standing at the edge of the last pavilion, you realize that the act of holding, the work you have done so dutifully, is not an end, but a continual process of release. The retreat was never meant to be an unchanging thing. It was always meant to move, to breathe, to dissolve and reassemble, like the clouds themselves, like the air between them. You were not here to prevent the retreat from becoming. You were here to help it understand the nature of its own becoming. At first, you held on to the idea of preservation. You believed the retreat was a structure, a thing, something to be maintained. But now, as the air shifts around you, as the light angles in new ways between the clouds, you feel it, this ever-growing, ever-expanding understanding that what you have been stitching all along is not a static world, but a world in motion. A world that moves not toward some end, but toward itself, always becoming, always evolving. The inhabitants feel it too. At first, they came to the retreat to escape. They came to rest, to find solace in the edges you wove together. They thought they sought refuge from the world below, somewhere between earth and sky, where nothing could disturb them. But now, they too begin to understand that this is not a refuge from change. It is a place to welcome change. They move differently, these people who once rested still beneath the pavilions. They sit less and stand more. They wander between clouds, as if following the same rhythm of expansion that you have come to understand. They no longer shrink from the space between things. Instead, they lean into it, their bodies attuned to the drift, to the breath of the retreat, to the pulse of the sky that has always been there, waiting for them to notice. You begin to see them for what they truly are, not visitors in a sanctuary, but participants in a living process. They are becoming too. Their presence, their stillness, their quiet attentiveness has all been part of the retreat's unfolding. In the same way, you are no longer a weaver who tends to the edges. You are a part of the edges now. You are not separate from the retreat. You are its breath, its hum, its pulse. There is no longer any distinction between you and the work. There is only the movement. You notice, too, that the clouds themselves, those ancient stationary clouds, are no longer static. They no longer resist the flow of the air. They do not hold their positions as firmly as they once did. They are still anchored in place, but their forms are more fluid, more expansive. The silk that binds them is no longer simply a tool of construction. It has become part of the conversation between the clouds and the sky, part of the slow turning of the retreat toward the unknown. And now, for the first time, you truly understand the nature of what you have been doing all this time. Your work has not been to hold these clouds still, to keep them anchored to some immovable point in space. Your work has been to allow them the space to move, gently, slowly, without force, without fear of dissolution, to teach them and yourself that there is strength in yielding, in releasing, in opening up to what might come next. The retreat is not simply a place. It is a moment, a span of time, a thread woven between the worlds. The clouds will fade, the silk will wear thin, the pavilions will drift, unravel, and vanish, but the retreat itself will never be lost. It cannot be. It exists as a potential, as a way of being, as a gesture toward the infinite. As you stand at the edge, looking out into the open sky, you realize that there is nothing more to hold. The work is done, not because the edges have vanished, but because they no longer matter. There is no more need for the careful stitches, the delicate tension, the quiet adjustments. There is no more need to keep everything together. The retreat is already whole, as it was always meant to be, a place of fluidity, of passage, of becoming. You take one final step, not off the edge, but into the edge. There is no longer any boundary between you and the sky. You are suspended in that moment, that space, held by nothing but the air around you. You could fall, you could drift, you could dissolve, and yet you remain, not still, not unmoving, but becoming. You understand now that it was never about permanence. It was never about finding a place to stay. It was always about movement, about allowing yourself to be carried, to drift with the world, to listen to the subtle shifts in the air and follow them without resistance, without fear. The retreat is not simply a place between worlds. It is the space that allows all things to pass through, to be born, to change, and to dissolve back into the sky. It is the space where becoming is the only constant, and where nothing, not even the clouds, is ever truly fixed. In this space, you are no longer the cloud weaver who stitches and binds. You are the one who drifts between the clouds, becoming the sky itself. You are both the structure and the release, both the weaver and the thread. The work is not finished. It has simply shifted, and you, who once held the edges together, are now part of the fabric of the sky, part of the retreat, part of the slow unfolding of everything. And so, the retreat continues, no longer a place to escape, but a space to become, for you, for the clouds, for the inhabitants who will come after, for all of them who have learned, as you have learned, that the sky does not wait for things to remain in place. It waits for them to be free,